Frankly speaking, this is something else, and all those who see excessively Greeks in the Old Testament, Javanese, in fact, only respect one rule, and that is to spread the Greek sail as much as it's possible so that Serbs would not be seen behind it. Even with all their efforts, they couldn't make such a big sail. Nicholas Frere says, however, it is quite certain that in the name of Cadmus, whose history we know, there is not a single Greek hero named Denis who conquered the East. The time of Cadmus is 14th century BC, and Denis is shortened from Dionysos, as the Greeks called god Bacchus. The Greeks said that the campaign of the Aryans to the east were never happened and that it was invented by Macedonians. Indeed, there is no Greek presence or Greek language among the Aryans in the east. Ctesias of Cnidus was probably the first Greek to see India with his own eyes. Lucian says that he wrote about India only according to the stories of the Persians. As an eyewitness, Ctesias tells us about the Sardinian mountains, the Geta River and the Seri as natives of Punjab. In fact, he tells us about the Serbian mountains, the Geta River and the Serbs as natives of Punjab. Victor Ansesi, a Catholic priest, marks Morea, Peloponnese, as the land of Jovan. That cannot be related to the Ionians, since Morea was the land of Dorians. It is even harder to explain how so many people could come out of a small island and cover the whole of Europe and a good part of Asia. Joseph Mede says that Morea is marked as the center of the land of Hellenes, Elisha. The Greeks began to develop as a separate nation only after the Trojan War. Herodotus says, yes, the Hellenes were still small and weak when they separated from the Pelasgians. They multiplied and strengthened thanks to the fact that they managed to Hellenize numerous Pelasgians and other people. Herodotus' description of the development of Greeks as a people completely coincides with the position of the Holy Scriptures that Hellenes are the sons of Jovan. In Isorod, Jovan is referred to as Yavanim in plural, and in some other Eastern people it is mentioned in the form of Javan. The original form of that name in Serbian language was Jovan. Bohardius says, Jovan, that it was changed to the Yaon, as it is found in Iliad, and then Yon. Cosma Indicopleusta, writer of the great geography of the world, which cannot be found anywhere today, only a small work of testamentary geography is available, which is probably an excerpt from his main work, writes about Japhet's sons and mentioned Jovan as Jovan. Alfred Morris says that the Greeks changed the name Jovan to Jaon. By this we recognize in Javan the original Ionians, which means Pelasgians. Herodotus, confirmed on the subject by other writers, tells us that Ionians are descended from the Pelasgians who occupied larger part of the country later called Greece. Mori also says that all Semitic people called the Greeks Jovan. He thinks that it comes from the Phoenicians who gave the entire coastal Greek Pelasgian community the name Jovan. He is also trying to find the meaning of this word, its root. He says that Lassen connected the Sanskrit Juvan with the Latin Juvenis. The Latin juvare and the Zend jauna mean to protect. Suida also mentions this name as Jovan. Lenormand cites several forms of this name among Eastern people, such as Yaon, Yavan, Yavana, Yavna, and Yauna. Bohardius says that Giovanni is also referred to as Yanes and Yades. He says for the Chaldeans it is Yavan, Macedonia. For the Jews, Jovan is Thrace, all the way to Dardanelles. According to the prophet Ezekiel, Jovan is Macedonia, but he also mentions them in Happy Arabia. As for the already mentioned Ben Gurion, Jovanians are Macedonians. The Greek Ion originated from the Serbian Jovan. Greek writers tried to portray only Athenians as Ionians and that all other Ionians were Athenian settlements, which is not true because Ionians are also Achaeans and Beochans, who are not Athenian settlements. The Greeks at all times called the Adriatic Sea the Ionian Sea, as the southeastern part of the Adriatic Sea is called today. Except for the Greeks, no one else called the Adriatic Sea the Ionian Sea. Wells wonders how to explain the name of Ionian Sea in the west, where there were no Ionians. The question is, why did Greeks call that sea Ionian when there were no Greeks on its shores, and even less Ionians? The only one answer, because of the people of Jovan, whom they called Iona, lived on the shores of that sea. For the ancient Greeks, the Adriatic Sea was Jovanian Sea. Ionia is Asia Minor, was again in the land of Jovan in which the Greeks settled. The Greeks did not settle there in some desolate land, but in land that belongs to the Caris, and which they called Lydians. The prophet Daniel calls in the Bible Alexander the Great Tsar Yavan. It literally means Emperor Jovan. This name of the prophet Daniel is quite correct because Alexander the Great was the emperor of the entire Helm Peninsula, the land of Jovan. The Jewish religious books, Targumim and the Talmud of Vardun explain the Jovan of Izorod with Macedonia and the Talmud of Jerusalem with Ephesus, which some have read as the name of the city of Ephesus in Asia Minor. In the Talmud, Italy is also understood as Jovan, including Rome. The name of Jovan was later transferred to Constantinople. According to Alexander Polyhistor, transferred to Eusebius, the Assyrian emperor Sennacherib fought in Asia Minor in province of Cilicia, and on that occasion his opponents there are called Jovan, which were Serbian tribes. The records found in Nineveh mention Jovan as a neighbor of Hilak, Cilicia, and Melida, that is, Melitani on the upper reaches of the Euphrates. Philip Gross says that the Assyrian king Sennacherib had a conflict with the cities of Cilicia, which are mentioned in Assyrian records as the cities of Jovan. The Persians called Jovan from Yauna from the European continent, Yauna from the coast, and Yauna from Asia Minor. In Europe, they mentioned Yaun next to Saskans and Skudra. Lenormand believes that by Saki they mean Traki, and Skudri they mean Macedonia. This Skudra is the assorted name of Serbs, that is, the Serbs. The same name, Skudra, is given to the inhabitants of the city of Sardis in Asia Minor and the people. I don't know if that name is really in some Persian records or if someone misread it. In the Persian language there is term Yauna Takabra, and in Media Yavana Takabarpe. And both of these expressions mean Giovanni, who wear swords or feathers. In the Iliad, Homer mentions Abante from Euboea from Trachea as people known for wearing peppercorns. There are also both in Ionia of Asia Minor, and Herodotus says that they, as people, have nothing in common with Ionians, that is, with Greeks. The Abants were settled in the middle part of Euboea in Chalkis, and they were known as brave warriors. Aristotle says that they are Thracians. Plutarch says it is the Greek hero Theseus who wore a pepper in his youth. Published by Plutarch, Le Belles Lettres explains that Theseus wore a parchment as a number of barbarian people. However, this means that the most famous Greek heroes imitated those barbaric people.